Hello and welcome to Turnbuckle Bros and to another edition of the King's Roundtable.
Whoa! G'day, mateys! WWE Hall of Famer Bushwhacker Luke here, and you are watching the Turnbuckle Brothers podcast.
And here we are again with yet another exciting edition of the King's Roundtable here on Turnbuckle Bros. Of course, as always, I am the maniacal wrestling fan, Matt Huett, alongside the Blue Chipper, the Day Tripper, the Lee May Ripper himself, the King of Diamond Mine Online in his own mind, Steve Mutzu. And we got some first-timers here on the show with us today. We have fellow maniacal Cardinals fan with us for the first time, Mike Holtzclaw today. Welcome, Mike. Love the shirt. Welcome to the first your first roundtable with us. Of course, we have for the first time coming to us our first international guest on the roundtable, Mr. Charles Wolfson from Diamond Mind Online. Welcome, Charles. And of course, we have David Avens coming to us from New Jersey, and Tyler Ensor from California. So another edition of the Roundtable today. And today it's going to be Pick on Charles Day. Ask Charles a bunch of questions about Diamond Mind Online. And let's just get right into it. David, I know you're chomping at the bit to ask Charles some stuff. Let's get this thing rolling here.
Hi, Charles. I'm curious, of all the things that you've learned by working at IS, what's like the most surprising that you wouldn't have expected that would be something you'd learn in this job?
Oh, gosh. What, about the game or about life?
About baseball, about life, about customers, about anything you want to talk about.
I've been doing customer support since the game started, basically. And these days, probably 99% of all replies to queries to support have come from me. I don't know if now I'd consider it a surprise, but the constant, this guy is doing crap for me is the overarching theme of queries to support.
Do people complain when their players overperform?
Never. Never. Something I tend to point out, but you have to be gentle in cases like this. Nobody wants to hear.
I got a question for Charles that's got to be on all of our minds. Where's your accent? What's going on here?
Where's my
I wanted
accent?
some good day mates and stuff like that.
Forget it. I've actually now lived. I moved here in 1986. I've lived in Australia since 1986, so I've now lived here longer than I lived in the U.S., but I was too old when I got here to pick up an Australian accent.
You could fake it just for us.
I can't. I'm terrible at accents.
Charles, something I thought to ask you is being is that you said that you handle a lot of the inquiries personally. I mean, what is just the most idiotic inquiry that you get all the time that you're so annoyed with that it's just the one constant that just bugs you all the time?
Well, as I said, it's it's now 30 games into the season, and so-and-so's only hitting 160 or something like that. Is this what I paid $10 million for?
I've experienced frustration like that before, but it's surprising to me that people don't think about the fact that this game wouldn't be fun if that couldn't happen. Like if players always hit what they were expected to hit, this game would quickly become really boring.
Yeah, it's You can't. Just some people you just can't convey that to.
Yeah.
My other favorite is and there's
Sorry, I got a 6-year-old bugging me.
Yeah, that's all right. My other favorite is complaints about injuries. That's a regular as well. And what can you say? It's that's bad luck. Sorry, buddy.
What is the best question you've ever been asked that made you like really stop and go, huh? I hadn't thought about that. That you really had to think through an answer for?
Every once in a while, and this came up recently. You guys did I guess Steve did a little video about this. I guess it was Chris who first raised this point about XX base stealers and some stealing more often than others. And my understanding always was that, X is X, that's it. But as it turns out, in this case, it wasn't. But, I've looked at enough issues now that I can pretty much see straight away when something's pointed out, whether it really is just a small sample size or fluky type thing, or whether there is something weird here that I can't explain that needs looking at more closely. And
I really appreciate your being willing to look at it when the evidence isn't flimsy.
Well, I mean, it's hard. It's not like we're not Microsoft, I've got this army of people. I'm not a programmer. I can't diagnose these things. It has to go to a programmer who has to dive into code and stuff like that. And it's really quite amazing that the sim engine and the computer manager's decision-making logic and all is really complex. It's complex. There are a million factors that interact in a million different game situations. And there are times when even the people who have worked with the sim engine, from the beginning of time are surprised when they look at the code. They go, oh, I had no idea it said that. So, and even the person who wrote it, sometimes doesn't remember until they go and look, because it's decades on. And there isn't some big manual with all the, code and decision-making logic and all. It's not, the only place it's really documented is in the code. So that's what you have to do. You basically have to go into a game and look at the situation and parse out from there what the factors were and why the decision was made the way it was.
And the dog agrees. I mean, and why wouldn't he? And you know what? And to those guys who give Charles credit.
Yeah, he's just looking at his game results today, and he's complaining about some bullpen decision. Why wasn't my closer brought in?
And you know what? And to all those guys giving Charles grief about, I paid $10 million for this guy, and he's only hitting 160, and all the injuries and this and that. Hey, do you watch real baseball? I mean, stuff like that happens all the time, constantly. Come on, man. I mean, it happens.
Lindor.
So giving Charles grief about that. The dog agrees. Yeah, tell him.
Tell Mets fans about that Francisco Lindor couldn't hit that bad for the first part of the year.
What always gets me, too, is I've seen complaints on the message board where people are saying, can you point to any situation in real life where X would have happened? And sometimes the answer is no, but there's also just so many more games simulated here than have ever occurred in real life that we're bound to see tons of stuff in this game that have never happened in real life.
Sure.
So Charles, how long have you been at this with a Diamond Mine online? I know that Dane, and we talked to Dane a few times now, and he's told us a lot of stuff. But I'd kind of like to hear your take on that, and the evolution of the game, the greatest fantasy baseball game, simulated baseball game in history.
Well, I mean, I don't know if Dane told the whole story. I mean, he and I originally connected when I played my very first team on when the game was then just gone on to ESPN. This is like before the current game, and my first team ended up playing Dane's team in the World Series, and he had a Memorial Coliseum all right-handed team.
A page out of Steve's book.
I can't remember who won that World Series, but that's where we first connected. And
That
then
means
back
Dane
in
won, right?
Sorry?
You can't remember means that Dane won, right?
I can't remember because I can't remember. I can remember a few of the players who are on the team. I remember I had Smokey Joe Wood, I think, and Epa Rixey. That's about all I can remember. Dane paid a visit to Australia. He was coming to Australia, so I said, well, come and stay with me. I was in Sydney at the time. And he stayed at my place in Sydney for a while. This is 2005. And while he was there is when he first got the idea to approach Tom Tippett and start Diamond Mine online. And after he got back to the U.S., he contacted me and told me that was what he was doing. Asked me if I wanted to be involved. I said yes. Before the game went live, I went out there to San Francisco, and we had a meeting where we were working out some of the game features and parameters, how it was going to work. I came back to Australia, and I've basically been involved with the game since before it started.
So the game was kind of born in Australia, huh?
Well, and at least the idea for the Diamond Mine Online website was the game, of course, already existed. At that time, I can't remember. I think it may have wrapped up on ESPN or not. It was still going on Stats, I think. But Stats license was coming to an end. No, ESPN I think was still going then too. So for a while there were 3 different outfits offering the game when we first started up.
Hey Charles, do you remember when me and you went over to What If Sports at the same time, and I went crazy over there? You remember that?
I don't. I remember a short time fiddling around with What If Sports. Yes, but yeah. I can't remember you going over there. It was a funny game.
I got in the league and I was telling them how they were all noobs and that if you don't play at our game, you're all terrible. I was just acting like a lunatic. And then I told them that if I don't win 100 games, that I'll quit or whatever. I said, I don't know. But then they made it a 24-man league. And I said, you know what? I'm going to get 2 teams in that league and I'm winning 100 games in both of them. And I had to lose with one of my teams so I could win 100 games with both of them because I had like 112 with one and like 97 with one, but I was playing myself, so I had to lose. I got it done. 100 with both teams.
That sounds very unfair to have 2 teams in the same league.
Which brings me to a question.
You got to win 100 with both of them.
Brings me to a question, Charles.
How many was there?
How many times has Steve just brought out the murderer in you as far as his incessant, bothering you in support and everything else?
I didn't bother him too much.
No, he's not a problem. I don't necessarily agree with all his theories, but he's never given me a hard time.
Oh,
not that I can recall, anyway.
Well,
I'm curious.
Be lucky you haven't grown up with him the last 40 years like that.
I was going to ask, because you play the game, obviously, how many teams do you generally run at a time?
As few as sort of like 2 or 3. sometimes if a couple are just sort of nearing an end and a few interesting leagues have popped up, as many as sort of 6 or 7 tops, but not for a long period of time. It might be a week where I have that many going, because I can see that like 2 are about to end. So, but yeah, usually somewhere around 3 or 4, somewhere in that vicinity.
As long as we are asking Charles about playing the game, I'm gonna put you on the spot, Seawolf. Last year in 2020, you put up a single season game league for guys who hadn't played single season before, to kind of introduce people to it. And I had not played single season before, so I signed up for it, and I ended up beating you in a 7-game World Series. And what I want to know is, did you tank Game 7 because you thought it would look bad for you to win a World Series in a league that you set up for a bunch of newbies?
I don't remember that, but I can honestly say I don't think I've ever tanked a game. Even if I've got a 30 games under 500 or something, I always try to win right to the end of the season. Just trying to win.
Makes me feel better.
What's the point? I always tell people, what's the point of playing if you're not trying to win?
Exactly.
I figured that was the answer, but I also thought Charles would figure this wouldn't look good if he invited a bunch of guys who'd never played before and won the World Series. But Lefty Grove threw a 3-hit shutout in Game 7, yeah. So I felt like it was pretty legit.
In all leagues that I join, in all leagues that I create, in all leagues that I join, whatever the theme is or something like that, I always choose my team last. I always give everybody first dibs on captains, franchises, whatever. If it's like a choose your own theme type thing, I always try and pick really like restrictive, hard themes, because I don't want to create any, impression that I have any kind of advantage or whatever.
And you did that. The league that you set up was a very good one, and you did everything just as you said. It was a very good introduction to the single season game.
Oh, good.
I don't know if other people want to jump in, but I'd be curious to hear about how you, your approach to player evaluation. Like, do you use spreadsheets, or how do you pick your teams?
Well, no, I've never created my own spreadsheets or whatever. For the career-rated classic player pool, I do have. I have access to all the player ratings, including the underlying counting stat ratings, because that's part of the salary calculation mechanism. So I can see all that. I don't play classic very much these days, but and when I do, I pretty much just go from my head rather than looking at anything else, because it's been around so long and I know it so intimately. And I'm not usually trying to look at get the finest mathematical edge. So
right.
I just kind of choose by looking at what's there, what's available on, when I do a player search. SSG, in order to formulate salaries, there's files that have basically normalized stats as well as the ratings for every player. So theoretically, I mean, I have access to that, but I never look at it. It wouldn't be, it's too massive, and I wouldn't do it anyway, but because it would be sort of like an unfair advantage if I was like, looking at everything behind the scenes like that. But I can't be bothered anyway. I just use the same player search facilities as everybody else, looking at real life stats, and of course, that's not enough, because the real life stats, when they go into the game, then are normalized when the players are actually rated and generated. So from there, I will go to BBRef or RetroSheet to compare players there based on like OPS plus, things like that. I mean, if you want to get into sort of more nitty gritty about how I would like the things that I would search for, the kinds of things I put in my search requests, I have like my standard batter search and pitcher search requests that I use. I'm happy to sort of do that, but it's not really magic. I'm not like, I certainly don't take things to as fine a degree, I think, as a lot of people do.
I don't either.
I'm much more of a broad brush kind of person.
Yeah, I agree. I'm the same way, because especially with like SSG, your draft pools and your teams, like a progression league or something like that. Sometimes you're working around, different areas, different positions, depending on, your players that year or whatnot. So you might be looking for a second baseman to platoon in one draft, and then the next draft you're looking at outfielders, and then the next draft you need somebody in your bullpen. I mean, there's so many different variables and things that you can juggle around with that, and I don't look for that stuff either. I just look for who's available, who the best available, who can fill that specific need that I need, and that's who I go for. There's not really a whole lot of weeds to go whacking through to do that sometimes.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's important to choose like, good value players. Although in SSG, I tend to think that the players are all pretty fairly valued anyway. So you're getting what you paid for in most cases. But I think more important is your plan and the overall logic of your roster construction.
Especially in the SSG.
Yeah. I mean, I set up a lot of leagues. I mean, you guys have probably noticed, I regularly sort of putting leagues out there, and one that I've had one sort of ongoing series. I don't think any of you guys have played in them, but it doesn't have a name. I've never come up with a good name for it, but it's always centered around some unusual event. Like there's one going now called the Stole 'Em All League, where each person picked a guy who, in the same sort of at bat or whatever, stole second, third, and home. He reached first, and then he stole second, third, and home. Hasn't happened that many times. And so you got his team and the team they were playing against, and that's how you have to make up your roster. And he had to be on your roster, and the pitcher or pitchers who were on the mound at the time had to be on your roster. Now, so you had to play in the park where the game actually took place. So you're getting just two teams to choose from. And apart from selecting your captain, and I always choose these events so that the captain's list is limited to maybe like 15 to 20 possible choices. So every team's going to have flaws. I mean, you can't just go out there and pick two ideal teams. You have to pick the two who played in one of these games, and there's only 15 combinations or choices. Now, what happens is sometimes people who are like looking at this, they'll see some choice, and maybe it's like the Yankees against the Red Sox or something like that in some game. So you got Joe DiMaggio and Ted Williams and all these people. But I always have a fairly low salary cap as well for these leagues and fairly limited money. So they go, I don't want to play this because I can't use all the stars. I can't, this isn't going to work. I can't fit them all into the salary cap. But they've missed the point. The point isn't to find the combination that has the most star players. The point is to find the combination that will give you the best team within the salary cap you have. And if that means you can't use Ted Williams, so what? The point being that you forget sometimes that in some situations, what you're looking for isn't Charlie Gehringer, but Aaron Miles. You're looking for some cheap guy who is serviceable, who will give you a lot of at-bats. And so the ideal team, like say you're doing like some franchise league where you pick out 3 seasons of the franchise for whatever restrictions there are on that. It may be you're not looking for the New York Mets season where they won 101 games. You might want some like really crappy Mets season, but they happen to have a couple of guys like, Wayne Garrett when he cost $3 million, but had a great OBP and fielded well at third base, and it'll give you 500 plate appearances cheap and be really serviceable. You want a team that'll give you a few players like that. So it's really having that overall sense of how you put the best team out there and assemble the best roster within a certain sort of salary cap or whatever. I mean, to me, I find that really intriguing and challenging rather than just going out and trying to find, how can I get Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth and Ted Williams onto this team with a $250 million salary cap?
In Classic, I usually play standard cap, and I like low cap, but I don't fault people for wanting to play high cap.
No, it's fine if that's what you want to do. Yeah, it's great.
There are about, if I remember right, 336 players or something that get taken in a 12-team league. I wouldn't mind the salary cap being set so that you're basically choosing from the 600 best players of all time, because it's fun to play with players you know something about, and we all know more about the stars than about anybody else. It's also fun to learn about new players by playing in lower caps.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of high cap, but I definitely understand the appeal of it.
Steve taught me a lesson when I was a noob to the game, and we played a league just against each other. And it was kind of, he was teaching me, the importance of matchups and stuff like that. So he's like, you can pick any team in the world of any player in the world that you want. And, it was all left-handers versus all right-handers. And he completely destroyed me. I don't think I won 20 games. And I learned a lot from he goes, I'm totally going to crush you. Like, this is, you're getting started out and your win-loss record's already going to be terrible. It's like the second league I was ever in. And it wasn't even like, I gave up after a couple of days. Cause like we how fast did it go, Steve? Like the league didn't take very long to do whatever, cause you created it. But
it was an 18 game a day league.
Yeah. 18. I mean, it was astronomical how much of an ass whooping it was on there. And I was like, all right, I get it kind of now.
Charles, you had an interesting league a few weeks ago that you started. I didn't join it. I was already used up all my available time. I didn't have enough time to take on another team, but you did a competitive disparity league.
Oh, yes.
That seemed like a really cool league to me because it was kind of simulating more so the real world of baseball where some teams have a lot of money and some don't.
Yeah, I've done 3 or 4 of those. I hadn't done one in a long time. I don't quite remember why I decided to do another one, but it's hard to do with, it's hard to do full stop with Diamond Mine because player salaries are more or less player value, but that's not the way things are in the real world. I mean, because of all the distortions in the salary model. I mean, with arbitration restrictions and free agency and whatnot. You don't get a guy who, a first or second year player who you can have on your team and be paying $300,000 or $500,000 who's giving you like an MVP type season. They don't exist in Diamond Mine, but I put in various rules to try and sort of simulate that a bit. You can only go so far.
What team won? Do you remember? Was it a higher cap or?
Let's have a look. I don't remember now. I
That's
know
something I really never thought of,
very
though.
disappointed. I know I was very disappointed with my own team.
What you were in the?
How in the
I was
major
in
league?
I was in the cheapo division, the central division. Let's see. So yeah, the one of the big budget teams in the East Division won.
Okay.
And they defeated a team in the Central Division, which was in the West Division, which was the middle division. But the way I set it up, at least one team from the Central, which is the lowest salary division, is going to make the playoffs because all the Central teams are grouped together, the ones with the lowest salary cap. All the ones with the middle salary cap are in another division, and all the ones with the highest salary cap are in a third division. So,
which division got the wild card?
The wild card, I think, went to the East as well. Yes.
But they couldn't win their first round
One team from the Central, the team that made the playoffs, actually finished over 500. That was Charles Ledain's team. He finished at 82-80. All of the teams in the East finished over 500. The team that finished last finished 82-80. And in the West, which was the middle salary cap division, the team that won finished 87-75, and all of the other three teams all finished exactly 500. And the team with the worst record was mine. Tied for the worst record. Tied for the worst record. I really thought I had a good formula in that one, and boy, did it stink up the joint. But there you go. That's the way it goes sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah, that is the way the game goes sometimes.
Especially for a small budget team.
Yeah.
I had never really thought about the game like that before, where like in Diamond Mine, you're never going to have Matt Carpenter and Carlos Martinez suck super bad for $30 million and Tyler O'Neill being amazing for $1 million. You're not going to ever have that, where you have $30 million just wasted. It's like never going to happen in Diamond Mine. I never really thought about that. That's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, you can't get a horrible waste. I mean, you can take bad value players and pay them too much, but it's not quite the same as...
Yeah, it's never going to be like Matt Carpenter this year. You're never going to get that.
Charles would tell you that he gets calls all the time from people saying, that's perfect for batting 160 for this salary.
The most frustrating ones, of course, are where they come from high cap leagues.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to go through the inevitable explanation. Well, if you've got $30 million batters batting against $20 million pitchers, the pitchers aren't going to do as well, and the batters aren't going to do as well as they would otherwise.
I teach statistics, and I think that it's a really difficult way for people to think, is in terms of probabilities, and I think it's just so easy to completely misunderstand that, I think, especially when you're frustrated, because you've got Babe Ruth hitting 250 or something like that.
I've been trying to help you with that, Charles. I've been writing for years and decades to don't even worry about the in-season stats and stop looking at them. Like, I don't care what happens as long as I'm winning. You could be betting 240. I don't really care.
Of course, sometimes I disagree with you on that one, but there you go.
Do you?
I've been trying to put that point across.
Yes, not the analysis or the logic behind it is absolutely right, but sometimes I still think, well, time to make a change.
Yeah.
It's like Rose. I always pull out Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. We've flipped heads now 800 times in a row. It's time to just bow to fate.
And I mean, there's a psychological component to the game as well that sometimes I could imagine it could just be cathartic to cut somebody who's just been awful all season. And I think it's the same thing as sort of not wanting to take a player again who was terrible for you, even though they're objectively a good value.
I'll ask you. I always call that
each one of you. I'll ask. Sorry, go ahead.
I always call that a therapy cut, where you know that it does not make strategic sense, but you're just sick and tired of watching a guy not produce. you just acknowledge this isn't the smart move, but I feel better doing it.
Okay, let me ask each one of you, because I'm sure that you will each have an answer to this. One player who, although he never seems to do as well as you expect, you just keep using him. I'll tell you who mine is. Whenever this is in Classic, whenever his salary is below 10 million, I always have Addy Joss on my pitching staff. And for whatever reason, he just never seems to do that well, but I just keep using him again and again and again.
Double duty Radcliffe for me. I keep using him. It's probably not a great value, but I like that catcher-pitcher
really
combo.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, he's really interesting.
I haven't played a ton of teams because I haven't been here very long, but I don't know if I'm saying his name right. Murayama, the pitcher. Excellent value this cycle and has been pretty awful every time I've used him. I've got him on a team right now where he's 2-13 with an ERA approaching 5.5.
Nice.
Sounds like a Mike Holtzclaw therapy cut is in order there.
Well, I had Joss on that competitive disparity team. He went 7-20 with a 5.09 ERA.
No.
And remember, I'm playing in a division of other teams with an $80 million cap.
Right.
So,
but you probably don't have great fielders.
No, I had good fielding. I had decent fielding.
He's looking at it right now.
I'm looking. Yeah, it's been pretty much, all VGs in the outfield, and I had Joe Cronin at shortstop. It's all right. I mean, 7-20, 5.09. In a division with teams with an $80 million cap.
Well, no, okay, so wait a minute. You're playing 72 games against teams that have the same cap you do. You're
Correct.
playing 90 games against teams that have a substantially better cap than you do.
Well, but they weren't super. I mean, it was 80, 100, and 120.
Okay.
And
120 is 50% higher.
Yeah, I mean it's more. But come on, 7-20, 5.09.
And he's the X durability, I think, right? Is he the guy? I'm trying to figure out if he's a guy that I've seen before. Is his durability X?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've looked at. I've never used him, but I've looked at it before.
Yeah.
And he's real ugly like a vampire, right? Ain't that what's going around with him?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yes, Nosferatu. Yeah.
Yeah, he's super ugly. That's probably the problem.
Oh my God.
I've used Wes Parker a few times. I got him on my team right now.
Wes Parker.
Yes. And all right. I know that he's coded to be worse offensively than I think he really was in real life and better defensively. So, okay, he's about as good a player as he was in real life. But I think he performs worse for me offensively than even his coding.
That sounds like shots fired from DVD to Charles right there, if I heard it.
Yeah, Charles can't come on a podcast and get away from coding stuff.
Yeah.
If you look at his BB ref stats anyway, he had 2 great years as a fielder for first base, but it wasn't like that his whole career. His whole career, he was a good first baseman, but he wasn't like, he wasn't Keith Hernandez. And offensively, the same reason that Sandy Koufax might be overrated a little bit. It was the Dodgers Stadium. It was 1960s. He was a pretty good offensive player.
But all Diamond Mine player ratings start with park factors.
I know.
And then era. So it's all taken into account.
I look at his reset price, and I look at his reset price, and I look at his fielding ratings, and I know if he was coded to be as good an offensive player as he looks on BBRF, he would cost more.
I got one more player that I just thought of. Used him on 3 teams now. Chico Simone. I think that's how you say it, right?
Chico Simone.
He got 13 home runs for me in a low cap league, which was just incredible. And I didn't watch a ton of games from that league, but it seemed like every time I watched the play-by-play for that league, he'd be hitting a double or home run or something. At the end of the season,
Chico Simone.
He only
Chico
had
Salmon. Come on, guys. It's Chico Salmon.
He had like a 280 on base, so obviously not a great player, but he also keeps showing up as a great value in my analysis for shortstops.
I'm trying to remember, but my vague recollection is that he does have a really wide platoon split.
No, it's virtually no split.
Okay. I sometimes mix that up. Oh no, you're right. He has he's basically even Steven.
And so he hit 13 home runs for me. I think it's 13. And the next highest, if you look at the scouting page for him, is like 7. So like, it makes me want to keep using him because that was awesome.
How much does he cost?
611. Okay.
Nice.
Oh, that's worth $611K all day.
As long as you don't mind that. As long as you don't mind that fair glove with a few extra errors.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
Therapy cut. He's gone. I guess my guy, I'm next to Tyler, I'm definitely the least experienced. I've been playing a little bit longer than him, but Bruce Sutter would be my guy.
Bruce Sutter.
He's either a closer. He's either, dead nuts, spot on, lights out, or he's just horrible. But he's Bruce Sutter. That pitch he threw to close out the '82 World Series, that's always going to have me pick him every time.
You're falling victim now to the newbie nostalgia.
Yes.
A newbie nostalgia pitfall.
I thought for sure you'd say Ted Simmons, Matt.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ted Simmons has been pretty good for me the entire time I've had him. I've used him wrong a little bit, but
he was not good for him. He was not good for him at all. He was terrible. I had to look at the stats. I'm like, what's going on with Ted Simmons? Why is Ted Simmons so bad for Matt? Why is it so bad? It was because he didn't have any. He had one catcher the whole time. That was it. It's Ted Simmons on the roster all the time for years, seasons on end.
The guy catches 1,000 innings a year. I mean, why not? He always has plenty of plate appearances, but he did perform a little bit better.
I'm like, why is he hitting 241 with a 280 OBP? What's going on here?
Lesson learned. All right, you already called me out on that one before. Thanks a lot for bringing that up again. Charles, I was going to ask you, who are some of the best players that you've played with? Maybe give some shout outs in certain leagues on there. Some guys that you think are top notch guys. Well, except for us, of course. Not me included.
And remember, I did beat you in that World Series.
Gee.
Anybody that comes to mind.
Jeckman.
Yeah, we got to say him.
He's
the
probably
Babe Ruth of the game.
Yeah. I can't. That's the name that jumps out at me.
Have to check him out.
He's won a lot of stuff. A lot of tournaments. Got a high ranking. A lot of accolades for that guy.
Shout out to Jeckman, who probably doesn't watch the show because he doesn't.
He don't need to learn that.
No, he's just what about this shining house on the hill.
Yeah, on the biggest house on the hill, on the biggest side of town, just like Ric Flair would always say in his interviews. Charles, how about this? Go ahead.
Before we go on, you guys are wrestling fans, right? Can I tell you a wrestling story?
Yeah, please.
Sure.
Do.
All right. We're going back now to 1979.
Okay.
I was living in Boston, and I was training as a chef. Well, that's all we'll say about that. And I was running a little restaurant on Newbury Street in Boston. And one of our regular customers who had his wrestling school just up the road was Killer Kowalski. What a great guy he was.
He was.
And we were a vegetarian macrobiotic restaurant.
And he was a well-known vegetarian.
Yeah, and he was a regular there. Time. Yeah, and in those days in Boston, the other prominent sporting figures who were regulars, Dave Cowens and Pete Maravich, when he was on the Celtics at the time, I think for a season or so, and they used to be in there all the time too.
Nice.
So there you go, Killer Kowalski.
Yeah, Killer Kowalski. One of the more feared and vicious heels, bad guy wrestlers of his time. A guy who was, they called him Killer Kowalski. His name was Walter Kowalski. They started calling him Killer Kowalski because he accidentally ripped a guy's ear off in a match for real one time. And so they started calling him Killer Kowalski for that. And what Killer Kowalski...
The only worst villain I can recall from those days was, see if this name resonates with you. The Baron from Malta, Baron Mikhail Cicluna.
Baron Sikkel McCluna, yes, a
Baron
big star in the. Yeah, he was a big star in the Northeast.
Yeah, he would sort of like get down on his knees and be pleading for mercy. And of course, the good guy would hesitate for a moment, and then Cicluna would like give him one below the belt, you know.
Oh yeah,
that was a standard shtick. Every match, at some point, the Baron would be pleading for mercy. The guy would hesitate, and then the Baron would give him a shot right below the belt.
Yeah, Baron was a guy who worked for Vince McMahon Sr. in the Northeast there, and New York, Boston, DC area up there. He was a big time bad guy star. I do believe he is a WWE Hall of Famer as well.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yep.
Matt, you would appreciate this. Many years ago, I had a phone interview with Ric Flair. Oh. And I'm talking to Ric Flair on the telephone, and he begs off because his daughter was calling in. And he said, "I'll call you right back. I have to take this." What am I going to say, right? And so he leaves and he takes the call from his daughter, who I'm assuming was Charlotte, and calls back like 5 minutes later, said, "I'm, sorry to have to do that." She's a high school senior. She's in the process of trying to figure out where she's going to play college volleyball.
Yes, it was Charlotte then.
I have to talk to her about this. And somehow I started, he was talking about her. I was talking about my son playing baseball. And we got going, and I realized Ric Flair and I are talking about our kids. Ric Flair and I are having a conversation about our children. And it was just one of those weird, surreal moments that have popped up in my career in journalism. That Ric Flair and I were discussing parenting together.
I probably could have died happy 1 minute after that moment happened. Super jealous of you right now, Holtzclaw. Oh my God, that's awesome, man. I mean, Ric Flair is like the Babe Ruth of wrestling.
I agree.
It's like talking about.
I agree.
Ric Flair's the Bob Jackman of wrestling.
Jackman. How about we do one last thing with Charles and wrap it up? And definitely, Charles, thank you for taking the time to be with us here today on Turnbuckle Bros. How about we just talk about this? Tell us what's next for Diamond Mine. Tell us what we have coming up.
Oh, what's coming up? Well, the app.
Yes.
The so-called solitaire game about which there are frequent snide comments on the message board. I periodically explain this when these posts come up on the message board, but I'll tell everyone now who's watching as well. And what happened with this was, initially, essentially, we're taking the online game and putting it into an app where you could play solitaire. It took longer to get to that than we ever expected. And when we finally got to the stage of testing it, we quickly realized that it was pointless going on with it. It was far too complicated and labor intensive for an app type game that somebody's just going to play on their phone. So we basically scuttled the whole thing and started over again, which is why it's taking so long. But we are now very close to beta testing. I would say within the next couple of weeks, we'll start inviting selected people on to come and try it, and we'll start refining it. But now it's something completely different. Now it's basically Diamond Mine Live on your phone, where you can play head-to-head games on your phone with all the teams that are available in the single season game. So that's where we're going, and that's actually going to be happening very soon. The 2021 season, all the work on that is going on now. The season, when it's finished, they always aim to have it ready sort of by mid-December for the PC game, and then as soon as it's ready there, then it takes us a few weeks to port it over to the online game. So that'll be coming early January probably. Now, the Negro Leagues relaunch. I've explained a few times what that's about. That's going to take a lot longer than I hoped it would, because there's still a lot of substantial gaps. I mean, I'm working now with the people at Seamheads, who are the ones who are doing all the research and the stats and all. And fortunately, the guy who's sort of spearheading all of the work on the Negro League stats over at Seamheads is also a long time and devoted player of the Diamond Mine PC game. So fortunately, we start from a good base of understanding of what's involved, but it's going to take some time for us to be able to do it right. But when we do, we'll be treating it just like we treat other major league seasons. I mean, all of the players will be linked to their actual teams and searchable by their actual teams, and they'll be rated on the basis of their careers, and they won't all be in there, but there'll be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players in there who aren't in there now.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, those are the biggest things that are happening. And I just added Buster Posey to my list of new classic players to be added in the next batch in January or February. I think everyone's probably a bit stunned that he's retired or retiring. He hasn't officially done it yet. But the word is that he's going to. And yes, I think he does belong in the Hall of Fame.
So,
or will he will be when the time when he's eligible to vote. I don't know if he'll be first ballot, but it won't take long.
You can't hold the counting stats against catchers because they don't get to play as much. Whenever they're comparing catchers and outfielders or whatever, they don't take that into account. Like a catcher just doesn't get to play as much, doesn't get the opportunities to pile up the stats like that. You're a catcher.
I wasn't piling up any stats in my prime. I'll tell you that. I can remember the 2 home runs I've hit in my entire career playing baseball over like 50 odd years. I can still remember them. But
can I ask a quick question? I'm really curious about this because I haven't been here long enough. I noticed that Robeson Field is there from presumably when the Blue Jays were playing in Buffalo. Does that mean will we get the Dunedin Stadium that they played like half the season in this year, or do they have to have a full season for it to end up in the game?
I'm not sure about that. I'm not the one who puts it together. I think it will probably, yes, I think it will probably be in there.
Cool. Okay.
Well, there you have it, Diamond Miners. I guess if Charles was to say one last thing, what I wanted to say is, Charles, thank you and your whole team at Diamond Mine for all the work that you guys put in, that you do to give us this game that we all love, that so many people, thousands of people love and play. I know you guys work super hard on all that stuff. So we thank you for that. We thank you for your time. And speaking of time, I think we're out of it for today's show. So for everybody on here, for Steve, for Mike, for the man, Charles Wolfson, DVD, and Tyler, this is Matt from Turnbuckle Bros saying, and let's go ahead and kick it to Bushwhacker Luke to take us out of today's show. Thanks for joining, everybody.
Whoa, WWE and Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer here, Bushwhacker Luke, and you are watching the Turnbuckle Brothers podcast. It has the hottest and latest wrestling gossip. Be sure to like and subscribe to this channel now. Oh yeah, whoa!